All right, let's try this again. See if the audio works. Let's see. All right, here we go. Now it's finally working. Cool. So today we got a deal in Slidell, Louisiana. Sub to balance on this deal $336,000. Purchase price $384,900. 4 bath, 3 bath, waterfront property, new roof 2021. So I know I don't need to put in any reserves to. Yo, what's up, man? How you doing? Thanks for the comment, man. I appreciate it. Good to hear from you, man. I see you going live all the time. So props to you for the consistency, man. Let's keep doing it together. All right, so what we got next? We got new roof 2021, home square for entertainment with a huge back deck and open floor plan. Bonus, no balloon, 3.25% interest rate. And this is the FHA loan. Just for those who are not familiar, sometimes there are restrictions on FHA loans, especially if you are taking on subject to. Sometimes you might have to self-perform the close because some title companies might not want to perform those types of closing because it might put the rest of their business at risk. So something for you to keep in mind of. And let's see, total monthly payment, PITI, $2,486, and there's a seller finance portion which is $19,827. So in a scenario like this, you want to make sure that your PITI is just simply $2,486. Whatever the balance might be, you can always just kind of back into what that property tax amount is or the insurance number is, and I'll show you all how to do that in a little bit. Let's see what they're advertising. No short-term rentals. Long-term rental is $2,700. A midterm rental is $3,000 to $4,000 just because there's a hospital 12 minutes away. All right. Total entry fee $38,000. So we'll keep that in mind. All right. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look this property up, and okay, it is waterfront. It's kind of nice. It's kind of right on the river. The flooring looks great, so I don't need to do anything there. Kitchen looks great. Definitely no renovations there needed. I kind of really like it. This is one of those homes that people would feel really, really blessed if you do rent it out to a housing choice voucher. I don't love the red paint. That's personally not my style. Maybe something a little bit more neutral, so it photographs a little bit better. The blue is probably fine. So I'll probably set aside maybe just enough money to paint the place because it looks like it's got green, red, and blue. I'd rather just have something be a little bit more neutral, like this color. That's probably fine. Maybe a little bit brighter. So, all right, let's keep going. So I got a good sense of that property. Let me see if I can do a quick street view on this property so I can get a gauge for the neighborhood. Well, it's right in front of the water, so I'm assuming this is a solid neighborhood. Usually when you're that close to water and you see a lot of boats around, you're generally in a pretty decent neighborhood. I don't see anything that's jumping out to me right now. That's like it's a bad neighborhood crime or anything like that. All right, cool. So given that's the case, we'll also check on tophap.com for the address. So it's 518 Legend Drive. I just wanted to make sure I just check the crime score real quick to corroborate what I saw on the photos. 114, so you're right along the national average. Maybe it's a little higher than I expected, but maybe this is a different area, and sometimes they just lump together crime scores based on the zip code because this is kind of far out from a lot of places, right? Okay, let's see. Let me just check the flood map really quick because it's right there. Boom, you are in a flood zone. So chances are, personally, I'm not going to buy this property just because of this risk factor right there. If you assume, and it is not meant to be political at all, if you believe in climate change and you believe in rising water levels eventually at some point, and there's not much funding to stop that progress, well, if you're in a 9 out of 10 flood zone, chances are your home's going to get flooded at some point. And really want to pay for flood insurance because that's probably going to get more and more expensive. So for me, that's not a deal. For me, I would have stopped underwriting this deal right here because, well, I frankly don't like the fact that my cash flow and my margins from my rental properties can be eroded by something that's completely out of my control. And in that situation, it's your insurance premium. If you're in a flood zone and this climate change continues to get worse, that's not something I really want to be a part of. So I would have stopped there, but let's go through the rest of the deal just to go through the deals and make sure that we are continuing to underwrite and practice. However, it's going to be really good for you to determine what your criteria is and determine what your buy box is and tell yourself what are your deal breakers. Because for me, the most important part is actually preserving my time so I don't get burnt out. Because usually, how you might burn out is if you do a lot of work, but you see zero results, that's generally how you burn out. So that's something I would advise against. So St. Tommy Parish. All right. So now we're looking up the HUD FMR, the fair market rents. And what I'm trying to figure out is what the zip code is and the fair market rents by zip code by bedroom count. And you can see right here that this is a 4-bedroom property. So the fair market rent for this property is $2,110. 2110. So that's the number that I'm going to use for my property. And let me just go ahead and start a new property file for this one. This way I can analyze the deal. This is 518 Legendary Drive, Slidell, Louisiana. Okay. 1-3. And then I just change the file name. So what I'm going to do is come on here, note the new FMR, which is for zip code 70460. This is a 4-bed. And then the 4-bedroom is 2110. 2110. Great. Next thing I want to do is get the market rents. And in this situation, I am going to plug in the address in the owner section in the market rent estimator for affordablehousing.com. And I'm going to plug in 4 bedrooms. And you can see there that within 3.31 mile radius for 25 units, the average market rent is $2,208. 2208. 2005, 2146. And I'm getting all these numbers right now because my partners understand how I underwrite my current deals. So this gives them a pretty good idea of all the research that I've done already. And this saves them a tremendous amount of time instead of having to do all this research themselves and underwrite it themselves from scratch. Okay. All right. This is for a 4-bedroom. Let me make sure I'm labeling that correctly. Boom. Usually I get the 3 and 4, but this situation, this property was already a 4. So there's no need to get creative and add an extra bedroom here. All right. So now I got 2110 and 2208. So I'm going to assume that my ceiling rent is the FMR. So that's 2,110. Well, when I compare that to the market rent is 2,208, I'm going to be fairly confident that I can get the full $2,110 for my rent because that is the ceiling rent that the housing authority or HUD has determined to be the ceiling rent. So that works well for me. All right. So let's kind of go in here and plug in the rest of the numbers right here. So the purchase price is going to be 300 and here, let me zoom. Let's put this guy all the way out here. All right. 384 900. What's my rehab going to be? This property was 2,500 square feet. So I'm going to set aside a little bit of money just to paint the place, 2,500. But I'm going to zero everything else because I don't need to really, maybe just some landscaping, but I don't need to repair the roof. And I assume that the house is in pretty good condition. So I don't need to renovate the bathroom anymore. It seems like just a pure paint job type of property. I'm assuming the water heater is working because someone was living there. I'm assuming that there's no termite issues unless I find something in inspection. So this gives me a rehab of about $10,800, which seems pretty fair. All right. So next up is what's my mortgage balance? Let's kind of plug it in right over here. Mortgage balance is $336,000. The interest rate on this loan is 3.25%. And I don't know when this property started. Let me see if I can find this property on PropStream really quick. I'm just going to load up the screen on the other side while I'm doing this. Again, if any of you want a copy of the spreadsheet, just DM me your email on Instagram at investwithkenhe, and I can send you guys the spreadsheet. I've been very fortunate. I've been given these spreadsheets by other folks, and I've been able to modify it so that I can analyze the deals all on my own based on my underwriting styles to go through all the different scenarios that I've been going through. So let's see. So I'm pulling this up now on PropStream. I plugged in the address. I'm going to click the details button. When I click the details button, usually if there is a transaction here, boom, right here. So this kind of verifies what the wholesaler is marketing deal. They said there's a 3 point something percent interest rate, but there is an FHA loan. The loan amount was 348,570, and the loan balance is 334 estimated. So is that pretty close with what was disclosed for this property? Let's see. 334. This is 336. Great. That's pretty close. All right. So I want to plug in the original balance right here so I know my exact balance. My exact payment is 348,570. I'm going to keep 3.25%, even though it looks a little different than what I saw in PropStream at 3.11. I'm assuming this is correct. This was also recorded from PropStream 1/25/2022. Okay. This tells me that this was likely a low down payment purchase, hence why it's FHA loan. Usually people can only put like 3.5% down on these properties. But this was probably a low equity seller, which means that if they just went on the market and they put it on and list it like normal and they pay off all the closing costs and realtor fees, chances are they might have been losing money on that deal. So this is why subject to was a better deal for the seller. Because on this one, they also still have 19,827 in a seller finance deal, but it does not pay out until you sell or you refinance the property. So I'm assuming maybe there's no payments here, but it doesn't matter because they already told me what the total monthly payment needs to be, which is $24.86. Now, this is kind of crazy, right? Because you can tell that $1,572 was the payment. So the rest of this number of 2486 minus the principal, minus interest, minus the principal again for the seller finance piece, even though I assume there's a small payment, it all adds up to $913. That's a pretty hefty bill. And you can see why. $366 is estimated in insurance. Maybe it doesn't even include flood. And then $200 is property taxes. So here's what that's telling me. If this is $200 is property taxes based off of Redfin's listing, well, that means $700 is insurance. And now things are starting to make sense, right? Because $700 is likely due to probably the insurance expenses for this property. And when you look back and remembered how we analyzed the deal, when we clicked on this deal, we found out that it was in a flood zone. And usually I like the Redfin UI better than Zillow because of this, because I can just simply click on boom. Where is it? Is it in the flood? And we're in California. The fire insurance is very, very expensive. So if you're in a fire zone, sometimes you might not even have insurance companies that will cover your property. So I like Redfin's UI better simply for this, because I can quickly look at the flood map and I can quickly look at the fire map. Because if you're in an area like California, well, it gets really expensive for fire insurance really quick, and that can erode your margins really quick, really fast. All right. So I'm going to add another $35 for insurance, because typically whatever insurance that they had for this home was probably for a primary residence property, since it was an FHA loan. If I'm turning this into a rental and an investment property, well, chances are it's going to be a little bit higher. So I'm going to add another $35 a month for it. Kind of negligible, all things considered. There's no sewer expenses here like we had in there for St. Louis. I got 8% for property management, and I might lower this vacancy to 3% because this is a really nice home. You're right on the waterfront. Chances are, I think if you get this property, you're going to want to stay a little longer. But here's where we are. This is a losing cash flow deal, because even if you assume that you get the maximum rent at $21.10, because of how high the PITI is, this is clearly not a deal. And then you add in all your other expenses for maintenance, because something will eventually break on the home, right? Even though they just replace a roof, eventually after 10, 15, 25 years, that roof will likely need to get replaced. And then we have 8% for property management and 3% for vacancy, because someone will eventually move out. So for me, at $21.10, laying out my scenarios here, This is a negative $850 cash flow a month and is a negative 33%. Oh, hold on one second. I didn't put in the full entry fee. Sorry, guys. That was my mistake, my honest mistake. Because this makes the deal worse. If the total entry fee is $38,000, even if that included closing costs, let's subtract that, equals 38,000 minus the closing costs. They definitely don't include renovations in there. This is now a $48,000 entry fee, and this is now a negative 21% cash and cash return. Like this is not a deal at $385,000. If you told me you wanted a home and you want a second home, maybe, but what do other people suggest, right? They were suggesting when they marketed this deal that, hey, you could get $3,000 to $4,000 as a midterm rental. Well, you just do the math really quick right here. If you put in $3,000, you're still losing money. And that's assuming you didn't even put in extra money to furnish the place. You get to $4,000. This is exactly how you get to 15%. So if you are able, hey, Tristan, how you doing, man? Good to see you, buddy. If you are analyzing these deals live, well, you have to use and compare this property, right? And look for the intangibles. This property is right in front of a water. Do you see another home that is on somewhere like Furnish Finder and that is 4 bedrooms and is also on the waterfront? Chances are it's going to be really hard for you to find something like that. And that's because, well, that's hard to find a comp. Usually we will look for comps in Furnish Finder based off of bedroom count, the condition of the home. But in this scenario, you're right on a waterfront. And when you go and look at the MTR and you look at where these homes are located, you see one that's available on February 2nd for 4 bedroom. This is waterfront. Yeah, so you might be able to get $3,900, right? If this property gets rented. So if you really are an MTR expert, well, maybe you want to pay attention to this property and see, and maybe put alerts for yourself. Hey, does this property actually get rented? You could even reach out to this Furnish Finder person and say, hey, how's activity look like? Like how fast do I need to put down a deposit so you can gauge the demand for this property? Because guess what? Affordable housing Section 8 does not work for this deal. But if you wanted to pursue MTRs, which is midterm rentals, and you want to go for a slightly longer property, well, this might work for you. But let's see, where is this on the map? So you can see that this property is right here, and this one is all the way out there. So it's further away. So I don't know if it's a perfect comp or not, but for you to figure out what the demand is, this would be a really, really good way for you to figure out what does the demand look like for rentals, for a midterm rental here. Because this is still occupied for another month, right? So completely up to you on how you want to approach the comps. But when it comes to comping midterm rentals, go by location, then go by intangibles. If this property is truly a waterfront beauty and is really on the water, well, does it have docks? Does it have anything? And this is going to be a very subjective. This is why comping is an art. You have to use a lot of different ideas to figure out what can you truly make for this money. Well, and then you just got to play around with your own scenarios, right? So if I saw another property for $3,900, but I need to furnish my property in order to get that, well, don't forget to add in extra money. For 4 bedrooms, I'm going to say at least $10,000 per bedroom. That includes the living room and dining room. You add in all of a sudden at $88,800 because you're going to furnish the place. Even at $3,900 rent, assuming nothing else goes up, which is completely unfounded because you must have utilities somehow, right? You must spend another $500 a month on utilities for water, electricity, etc. This is a break-even deal, right? At $3,900, I added another $5 in utilities, and I added about $40,000 to furnish place, and I'm at 88.8 grand, 88.8K entry fee now. Well, that's only a 0.81% return. Is that really worth my time and my money and all the execution risk of setting it up correctly and getting up and running and managing the property? I don't think so. It's not a deal for me. So even though I went through the midterm rental route, this is still not a deal for me, even though my primary focus would be Section 8 in this scenario. I only went through this because they advertised it as potentially $3,000 to $4,000. Even at the highest range of that, this is still not a deal. So for me, I'm walking away from this deal. It's just not for me unless you are looking for a different type of criteria. So this is not investment advice. I'm not soliciting any investments here. I'm simply doing what I'm doing every single day and just documenting it. That's it. I have nothing to sell you. Hey, thanks, Tristan. I appreciate you stopping by the live, man. Can't wait to continue working with you. And this has been super cool. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining the call today. Thank you so much for caring about affordable housing. Without people like you guys, I would have never had the home I grew up in. So thank you so much for caring about this. Thank you so much for tuning in live. I hope you guys continue to analyze deals with me every single day. I'm nothing to sell you, but I remember how scared I was when I first started real estate. And I honestly had analysis paralysis. And what happens if you use PML for furnishing? Hey, great question, Kaylin. If you use PML for furnishing, right, you have less cash money out of your pocket, but then you're also going to have a payment for the furnishing. So if you took $40,000 here, great question. Let's just walk through it, because I think sometimes it's easier to walk through it. Let me show you. Yeah, I can share my thoughts on your above question. Let's talk through it. You're watching on YouTube, so you see the full video. Great. All right. So let's say you did $40,000 of furnishing, but you got it on a deal. So let's add in a second loan for 40 grand right here, right? And then you add in how much interest can you pay. Let's say you pay 10%, because that's pretty standard. And you want to make 12 payments a year, but it's probably a short-term loan. They're going to want their money back in like 5 years maximum. So let's see. Let me add. Hold on, I deleted the loan too. So I'm going to add the $40,000 right here. Boom. Minus that. Let me add the $40,000 right here, equals 19,827 plus $40,000. And if you assume this is a 10% interest for what your deal is, now you are a negative cash flow because you had to pay the debt service for this property. Hopefully that makes sense, right? Before, we were assuming that we're using $40,000 as a renovation reserve out of there. But if you borrow that money and let's say 10%, let me just zero out the 19 grand, because just to kind of lower it would be negative $291 a month. And then you have a negative 7% cash and cash return on that deal. Hopefully that makes sense, because that is you have to pay money. You have to value that capital, right? Some folks will, well, what if I get a private money partner and I just give them equity so I'm going to pay them interest? Okay, great question. Well, if you did do that, right, you had to zero this out again. And then all of a sudden you add in back to $40,000 because you're spending money. That's capital being invested in a deal. And then if you're trying to split, let's say you're 50-50 with a private money partner, like you brought in 40 grand, they brought in another 40 grand, and now it's $88,000 again, all in. Still not a deal. How on earth can you convince someone to come in on a deal with you when you say, hey, what's my return on my money? You're going to tell them less than 1%? I think it's going to be really hard for you to raise capital for that. Again, not investment advice. I could be very much conservative in my numbers, but you saw how I found the MTR comp, right? You saw me go to Furnish Finder. You saw that the highest rent that I saw was $3,900 and $4,000. So to me, this is the best case scenario. And if you're underwriting using the best case scenario and you're still not a deal, man, there is not a lot of room for you to have in terms of cushion. And that's how people might lose money. So again, I have nothing to sell you guys. I'm not raising capital from any of you. I'm simply doing the work because I recognize how scary it was, how much analysis paralysis is a real problem. And the only way for you to get over that analysis paralysis phase is by doing the work. And then you can have the track history when you look back at your own YouTube channel and say, hey, I know what I'm doing. Because some of your partners might say, if you're looking to raise capital from them, they might say, hey, how do you know this is a deal? Well, at that point in time, you can go back and tell them, hey, look at my YouTube channel. I know this is the deal because I've looked at 100 other deals. Or if you do it for a whole year straight with me, you can say, hey, I looked at a deal every single day, analyze it live for 365 days. And this is the stat I heard. If you spend 18 minutes a day analyzing a deal, you will be better at analyzing deals than 95% of America. And hopefully that gives you confidence, your partner's confidence, for you to take that leap. Because you probably know what you're doing after you do it 365 times. All right. So thank you so much. As because of some such deals, they're asking $40K for PMP and a cash for $200 a month. This makes me think, well, what if we borrow money from PMI? Hey, Kaylin, that's a great question. And if they were asking for $40,000 for PMP and a cash flow for $1,200, just make sure you're asking one, right? What's the market rent? What's the FMR? And compare that to one another to make sure that they aren't they're not taking just the best case scenario, because there's a test that's called the rent reasonableness test, that even though your market rent might be higher than the FMR, they're not going to give you the market rent. They're going to give you the FMR because that's the ceiling rent. Unless you're in a big expensive city such as New York or Boston, where they have standard of living adjustments where they go above a certain percentage of the FMR, that's how you will go about it. The other option or potential pitfall is make sure that you are asking them about property management, about vacancy, and also about maintenance expenses. Because every single month, what people sometimes will do is they'll just tell you the gross rent and the PITI, and that's your gross cash flow. Well, that's not your net cash flow. The money has to be set aside every single month because your roof needs to get replaced after 10, 15, or 25 years in the best case scenario. Your water heater breaks every like 10 years. Your HVAC eventually needs to get replaced. If not, you still have to do preventative maintenance on your HVAC and your water heater. You still got to pay people to do that stuff. So make sure that whenever you're doing deals with other people, you analyze and understand how they're putting in expenses as part of the deal structure. And also you want to be super clear, and I've done a video on this before, you want to be super clear on how your partnership ends, because that's the most important question. Every partnership ends. Doesn't matter if someone dies, someone had a kid, someone moved away. Doesn't matter. Every partnership ends. And you have to talk about what that day looks like when it ends. Who's going to be able to buy out the other partner? What if one partner wants to sell and the other doesn't want to sell? How do you decide then? What if you need to reach in your pocket because you're losing too much money because someone underwrote the deal incorrectly and wasn't conservative enough? Who's reaching their money into their pocket? Right? How do you compensate one another? So just make sure that you guys are asking the right questions, and don't just jump into a deal just because you want to do a deal really fast. Just make sure it's a good deal, because I would hate for folks to get discouraged from real estate just by the mere fact that they did the wrong deal in the beginning. And the only way for you to understand and get confidence about doing a deal is by analyzing deals every single day. So feel free to copy this spreadsheet, copy the same property. And sometimes taking the first step is the hardest. But if you want to, just copy the same property that I analyzed today using the same spreadsheet. You can even use the same verbiage, but put it on your own YouTube channel tomorrow and start building this habit. And that's going to set you up for a lot of confidence, a lot of success. And I hope you all have an amazing day. I will be back here again tomorrow. And this was day number 95. Amazing. This is day 95. 95 days in a row of analyzing deals. If I continue getting good feedback about this, I'm just going to keep this going because the habit is formed now. I feel weird when I don't analyze a deal live anymore. And I used to hate social media. I used to be super shy. So I hope all of you understand that anyone can do this, even if you were introverted. Have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow.